I run a business with my husband called Create.net, which is a platform to build your own website. And we've been doing that for just over 20 years now. So we know a thing or two about how to enable people to get the most out of their website and do so without any technical knowledge. Around 30,000 people have used the platform to actually build a website online, and most of them are individuals and small business owners. And in more recent times, we're now on a mission to make the internet greener, because emissions from the internet, from digital usage, are quite high. In fact, they're bigger than aviation. And we're all creating a lot of kind of like digital activity now, more so than ever. So I'm going to cover that a little bit later. So I'm going to talk you through some ideas and some concepts and some things to think about, and then show you how you might put those things into practice, and the ways that we could lay out your content and things to think about as you're thinking about how your website currently works. So the first thing, which happens a lot, actually, can I ask a question? Are you people who want leads from your website, or are you people who want orders? Or what about you, Sophie? Can you?
For me, I think it's more trying to get people to get in contact with us from our website. So we're wanting to drive the traffic to our website, as well as obviously getting them to get in contact with us, really.
Making an inquiry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how about you, Jenny?
For me, it's probably, yeah, I would like people to see the website, but I would also like them to then go and book the events that I'm organising.
Booking events, okay. And Ian, are you there? Okay, not to worry, that's great. Okay, so we'll think about lead generation and getting people to make that inquiry. So so you've just focalized what your objective for your website is there. And it can be that your website has lots of different objectives, and over time, as websites get older, you kind of end up with a bit of a mashup of objectives, and where maybe the objectives that you really want people to take kind of get a bit diluted amongst a lot of other things. And we're all now very short on time, very short on decision making processes, because there's so many things we're contending with, that when you get somebody to your website, it wants to be really clear what the objective actually is. Hey, Ian. You okay? Good. So building a great site and thinking about the site that you've got starts with that objective. And so then the next thing to think about is your customers. So who are the people that you're actually targeting? Who are the people you really want to make an inquiry with you? Because you can end up getting loads and loads and loads of inquiries, but they also kind of want to be qualified, so that you're getting people who actually fit with you, want to pay the money that you want to charge, and that fit well with what you're targeting at them. So why do your customers like you? Why do you like them? What interests them about your product or service? What problems are you solving? And thinking about those customer personas. And when we talk about customer personas, I don't necessarily mean demographics. A lot of the time when we talk about customer personas, we talk about demographics. Well, they're women, and they're probably parents, and they might be between certain ages. I think you start to pocket people too much when you think about that, when actually what you actually want to think about with customer personas is people that understand your value. So why do these people understand your value? Why do they want to work with you? What's the value that you're giving them? And what do they appreciate? And how can you do that? Because it's a much easier sell on your part when it's a value sell rather than a monetary sale. And it's generally a good way to think about looking at that. And then moving on to that, your website's appeal. So when you know about those two things, you can start to think about what's really appealing to those people. And on that previous slide, when I talk about best customers, it doesn't mean that you won't appeal to other people. We're not trying to put everybody off. We're just trying to appeal really strongly to the people that are the best people to get. So thinking about what they look like, or thinking about how they feel when they use your products or your services, and how you can convey that in your imagery so that they can see themselves. How can you convey your purpose through your design? How can you make your customers feel safe? And you can do that by making it feel like they're looking at themselves. So when you're thinking about advertising, very often in adverts, you'll be seeing people that the advertiser thinks looks like you or looks like their ideal customer. And so when you're thinking about your photos, you can think about who are these people that generally use my product and how can I show them on the website? And through those kinds of things, you can make people feel safe. The other way you can make people feel safe is through colours, because there's all sorts of different colour psychology that exists. And colours mean different things in different countries. So again, thinking about how you can position yourself with the colours that you use to create that safe environment, to create those instant kind of psychological safety patterns that people expect. Things like ticks. Ticks are a really good way to convey to the brain that you're great. And actually, it doesn't really matter what the text is, because I don't know how much you know about how the brain works, but a lot of the brain is very visual in the decision-making processes that it makes. So it's actually made a decision based on what it can see without actually understanding any language. And that's why the imagery and the visual side of websites is really important. So that's some things to kind of get you thinking about and critiquing what you're currently doing. And so when you're then thinking about the website content that you're creating, things like how you use the language that your customers use within your content is really important. So if your customers are always on the phone saying, you solved this problem for me, or that problem for me, or I have X, Y, and Z that I need to get done, does your website then use that language, or are you talking in your own language to them? Because they can instantly feel much safer and much more like you're going to solve their problem if actually you vocalize their problem in the way that they vocalize it to you. And this comes back to kind of testimonials as well. So a great way to know about that language is to just ask some of your current customers to talk about the services that you're providing to them, what those values are, and then you can build a lot of your website content around what those customers give you as their feedback, you know, and also ask them very nicely if you can use them as testimonials, because again, testimonials is a really good way to make customers feel safe, to make customers feel connected with your site and to feel like they're in the right place to then go on and make an inquiry. So if your customers are telling their story on your website through their testimonials, through their case studies, it gives the potential customer a really good way to kind of like understand from another customer's perspective what they're going to get, what the outcomes are going to be. And those are the things that really they're looking for. Can you solve my problem? Are you going to solve it in the way I want it to be solved? And that makes it really easy for your customers to completely objective, because if you're talking their language, you're looking at like you solve their problems, much more likely to get that inquiry. And the final thing about your website content, which lots of people kind of forget about, is it up to date? So a really huge turn-off for people where they're going to be seeing red flags is if you've got a load of very ancient blog posts on there that make it look like you haven't written anything since 2018, you haven't been active since 2018. Is your copyright notice out of date at the bottom of your website? Have you got ancient offers on it, or you know, news that's from a long time ago? All those kinds of things make people think, is this still going on? Are these people trustworthy? And they're going to be off-putting when that's exactly what you don't want to be doing. It's much better to have lots of evergreen content that works for you as, you know, articles and information than lots of kind of like old news, which is not really relevant to people making a decision. So putting it into practice. So I'm just going to talk to you about a website that I built, and then I'll show you the website and we can actually look through it on the screen, and I'll change what I'm sharing. So this is a demonstration site that we've built, and it's for a gardening company. So they are looking to get more leads and inquiries and put people on a consultation, a free chat. And so what we've done with it is put in a piece here where you're capturing their attention with above the fold content. So the above the fold area is the first bit that's going to load in that the customer's going to see. And you've got, I don't know, under 3 seconds. I think it's even less than that to capture their attention. And so this piece needs to do that visual piece and also make them feel like they're in the right place, that they want to scroll some more. We've got, you can't see it very well on my screenshot, but I'll show you it in a minute. We've got a well-ordered menu. So thinking about what the items are that people actually want to click through and how each of those pages on your menu then support your homepage. So people tend to read from left to right. Well, people do read from left to right here. In other countries, obviously they don't, but in here we do. And so thinking about the fact that they're going to go from left to right on your menu, that's how most people are going to traverse it, and how each of those pages adds to that journey and adds to that person making that inquiry. Some people will just look at the homepage, they'll make the inquiry, they'll do the thing, or they might leave. Other people will spend more time being considered and looking through your content. So thinking about that. Another good tip with the menu is to think about and go and look at your Google Analytics. So your Google Analytics is a good way to think about which pages are really popular. You can segment it by new visitors, so Google knows that those people never came before, and so you can look at what new visitors are doing in particular. And if your new visitors are doing something completely different to what your menu says, it's worth having a consider of whether or not you should move those menu items around, or even think about other pages that actually fit better in the journey. So I can't see it because I've got, actually I don't have that on this page, but I was just going to say about clear call to action. So I don't have it here on this page, but I'll show you on the next bit, where you're starting to get the customer to think about what the objective is in these first sections. And obviously we've got engaging images here. These are all stock, so there's plenty of free stock around that you can use, but if you can, use your own imagery, because it looks more honest, it looks more trustworthy. Everybody these days is kind of a bit blind to stock, because a lot of stock is kind of used over and over again, and people can tell that it's stock. So where you can, use your own imagery and invest in having a professional photographer take pictures if you can, or replace it as you go as you can. So here we've got a quote, we've got a follow-up piece here around, you know, what we believe about our gardens, about our services, and a call to action to come through to more. And then we've got our call to action band, and our call to action band is continued through the website, so it always looks the same. So we've got clear call to action. We've got a quote up here to kind of give people a bit more personality, and you know, the main thing about it is to make sure that people don't just come to another faceless website, another website that looks like everybody else's. And that's where your imagery and the things that you say and do on the site can really set you apart. Because everybody, even though it might feel like everybody's offering the same kinds of services, or there's lots of similarities and there's lots of competition in the market, everybody does things a bit differently, and everybody has their own personality and can make their own connection with customers that they want to work with. So after we've got that call to action that you just saw, we've got what our clients say about the gardens, and these are quotes. And so this is the opportunity to back up where we've got that call to action. We've got some quotes from people talking, and that adds that extra trust to people taking the action. We've got a lovely picture here, and then we've got a big contact form at the bottom, which clearly explains to people what the action is we want them to take. Now, if you wanted people to phone you, for instance, I would put this back at the top here, somewhere up here, because even if you don't really want people to phone you as kind of like the main action that they take, and lots of people might email you, it's been shown that putting your phone number, if you're comfortable with it, on your website actually increases people's chances of making an inquiry, because it looks like you're more legitimate, it looks like you're more professional, and it's another trust signal. People, they might just carry on and use your inquiry form, but it just helps. So again, here with your contact form, making it really easy for the visitor to know how to contact you is part of understanding that objective. How do you want them to contact you? Do you want them to fill out a custom form where you're asking them lots of different questions before they make an inquiry? Do you want them to book onto the event? Do you want them to call you? Do you want them to email you? And I haven't included social media kind of stuff in there, because actually that's kind of like, that's probably not going to be one of the things that you want to lead with. So, you know, where people have their social media kind of at the top, I would suggest that you keep it down the bottom, or just keep it tucked out of the way, because a lot of the time you don't actually want them to go off to Instagram and get sucked into Instagram and spend 10 minutes over there looking at their feed and seeing what you've been posting, because you want that to be something that they do if they're not ready to make that buying decision. So lots of people might not be in the position where they're ready to buy, and they might not be at that point where they're ready to make that commitment. So thinking about your customer's journey to make that purchase with you and how long it is, and other ways to connect with them, should support your objective in the same way that having your social media there might be a nice way to get people to follow with you and keep in touch while they're making that choice, but it isn't the main objective. You're not trying to really get followers to your social media. In fact, your social media should be bringing people to your website. The objective of your social media is to get them there, not to bring them back the other way. And because the internet's really noisy, you need to keep them on your website for as long as possible. So right, I'm just going to pause there and come out and show you the site properly live and talk to you a little bit more about how the site's put together from a design perspective. It's a bit easier to talk about it like this. So we've got a restricted colour palette for the site. And when you're building your own site, you could sometimes end up putting a lot of extra colours and a lot of extra fonts in. And actually, whenever you look at really good design, it's quite tight. So there is a limited palette, there is a limited set of fonts that you might be using, because, again, coming back to what the brain likes things to feel clean, it likes things to feel tidy, and it likes things to feel connected. So as we go through the site, I'll go to the next page, we've chosen the same kinds of styling. So we've got the same shaped block at the top, we've got the same fonts, the same colours, we've got the same book your free consultation, so that it's making it really easy for the customer. There's less mental load if things keep chopping and changing around all the time. They have to rethink it. Whereas if you've got it all connected and it's all kind of feeling the same, then it's much easier for them to just think about what the content is, what you're saying to them, rather than where they need to start again. So here, for instance, we've got a limited number of different buttons. We've got the yellow button is always our get in touch button. So we've always specified that as yellow, and you might like to think about nice by colour. Different colours do tend to have different optimization levels, so they will change the amount of conversion. If you make this a big red button, much less likely to get leads, because people are inherently of the opinion that red is danger in this country, and so you might like to make it green. And you can try out different kinds of ways to get those conversions working, but also think about your brand as well, because it does need to be a bit of a balance. There's no point having this bright orange button all over your website because it converts really well, if actually it's also kind of off-putting and jarring to the whole design, because the two things don't, it needs to work together. And then we've got a slightly different button up here for find out more. So any time where we're taking somebody to another page of the website, we've chosen a more muted option there because it's a supporting action. We want them to do the free book their free consultation. That is kind of the objective. Well, it is the objective. And so the rest of it is supporting if they really want to find out more, if they need to go through more information that we're providing in order to trust us, to build up a picture of whether or not we work well with them. And coming back to those colours quickly, they're a really good way to get people's emotional connections going too. So we've got a muted palette, and again, we're talking about the ways that imagery can help to support what you're doing and help to give people those immediate signals. So the other thing I'd like to say about, come back to the homepage actually, come back to the homepage. Just come back. So again, here, repeating the block. So we've got the same kind of block of content here as we've got down here. It's just reversed around. And in between that, we've got a quote, and we've also got these as well. So these are logos that we kind of just made those up because it's not real, but you could have things like your associations. You could have things like, if you're say a beautician, you could have your insurance information on there as a logo. You could have companies that you've worked with as logos. You could have charities you've supported. you could have press you featured in, and all of these kinds of logos and credentials really are another trust signal for customers. So they're going to see those logos. Some of them they might recognize because they might be within your industry and they might understand who they are. Other times logos just work quite well because people know their logos and they see them as being official, and very often it's just adding them that will give you that extra boost of credibility. And then just coming down here, we've got the book a free consultation, we've got our customers, what they say here underneath. And when we've put testimonials on here, we've tried to think about the testimonials in a way which conveys those stories I already talked about, makes us personal. So we've got Joe and Dan, who are the imaginary people owning the company, and also thinking about what testimonials work well with this particular page. And if you can, as you build them up, having different testimonials on different pages. So each of these testimonials can tell a story, and they can each have a different connection with a different customer, because not everybody's problems are going to be the same. The other nice thing here with these testimonials is we've got people's pictures. So if you're corporate, let's say, and your testimonials are corporate, then people might be happy for you to use your their LinkedIn photos on there. If they're a customer, that's a personal person, that's a bit more tricky, and they might not want to give their picture, but you could have up there a picture of the work that you did, or a picture of, say here, we could have a little picture of their garden. If it was a bigger testimonial, probably works, or maybe a small picture of the product that they bought. A bit like on Etsy, they usually have the testimonial and then they have a picture of whatever the product was that they purchased. And so you're making another immediate kind of like tangible connection around what they've purchased. And all these things help to make those feel real. So, you know, where you get those testimonials up on people's websites and they say, thanks, it was great, you know, Jim, Essex. It doesn't give you the kind of substance that you want testimonials to really give you. And the more substance they have and the more true they feel, the more they're going to appeal to customers and hopefully resonate as well, because they will be people's real experiences with you, which will be the experiences that other people want to have with you. So just come back across to here. So again, About breaks it down a little bit for you, where we've got different breakouts of what we're going to do for people, what our services are. These don't go anywhere because we haven't built those out, but they would go to separate pages. And all of these extra pages are obviously SEO opportunities for you to think about the terms that you want to have. So we might have here, we might build this consultation page out, and we build out a page around garden design free consultation, because I bet there would be people looking for those kinds of things. So when you're thinking about each page that you're building, think about those pages as opportunities to get people to come into the site, and also think about them as opportunities to drive them through to your objective. So when you're writing, say like it's a blog, think about how that content can be evergreen. Think about how that content can actually be a landing page that drives people in, or that supports if people want a bit more information. And that way you don't end up with a lot of content that actually is not massively relevant at a later date, and isn't actually getting people to take your objective. You know, there are situations where you want to publish that piece of news because you want to then share it on social media, but a lot of the time we're kind of finding reasons to write things that are, we need to write something, rather than, does this help me get people doing what I want them to actually do when they're on the website? And so on this page here, we've got case studies. And again, these would all be SEO opportunities for us to think about. So we've got here like Chichester, Hastings. We could have Hastings garden design, modern contemporary garden design, Chichester. And so they're all of the kind of keywords are all around the sorts of things that we do, but they're getting us niche, specific terms and specific traffic, which is when you're a small website, is much easier to rank for than, you know, garden design. You're going to get more traffic and more people who are looking for actually what you're offering. So just moving on to this kind of like, this is our case studies page. So you might have services, about services, that kind of thing on your menu here. And one of the things that we've done throughout the site is we've kept the spacing the same. So this is another design element that's really important to use, thinking about the space that you give things. So very often people tend to like cram each section up really tight, when actually things want a bit more space. So we've got a gap here, you know, and we've got a gap the same down the bottom here, because sometimes you end up with sections and you've got one that's got a bigger bit of padding at one end than it has at the other end. And all of these things help the site to look professional, and they all help to make it feel nice to the eye of the visitor. And don't be afraid to use that space. Don't be afraid to write small amounts of content, just to give people, you know, that in, actually, I'd like to go look at that project. What is that project about? And then on that project page, you've got that objective very clear again. And again here, nice space, nice use of space and alignment. So everything's got the same spaces, everything's parallel, everything's symmetrical, because our brains really love symmetry. They find it very, very pleasing to the eye. And it can really help just make things look more professional. And I'm just going to come back to this other page really quickly to show you this other piece here. The other thing that I often see is you've got kind of like these sections here, and you've got consultation, blah, 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 and it runs onto 2 lines. And so you've got one box where the spacing's different to the other boxes. And obviously we all have quite a lot to say and a lot we think we need to convey, but thinking about how we can, you know, make a compromise between what we need to say and how it looks, so that things do, you know, we've got them all roughly the same amount of size there. And it's challenging in that, because when you're looking at mobile responsive things do change, and so you can't control everything about how it looks. And so when you're thinking about how you're designing, think about where most of your audience is viewing, and that's another thing where Google Analytics is useful. So if most of your customers are viewing on mobile and they're making their inquiries on mobile, then you should think more about how your mobile experience is than how your desktop experience is. And make sure that whenever you're thinking about designing, you're designing with that mobile view as well as the desktop view. And because a lot of the time, if I just drag it across, you can see here that, you know, we've thought about the content and how it's gonna wrap, and how it's gonna look as it changes devices. So where are we at? And then finally the contact page. And you'll see I was talking as we were going through the different pages that there are sub pages and there are supporting bits of information that we don't have up on our menu, that you get to as you go through the site, that support us through to the end result, which is to get in touch with us. Again, we provide a free half-hour consultation. We're being very clear about what you actually get to do, and how we want you to do that. And again, here, as you're completing the form, we've got 2 other testimonials, different ones again, to keep that trust going. And I thought if I just switch over to this is our website builder. I was just going to show you a couple of other things quickly in relation to that. I'm on the wrong page actually. Other bits and pieces to just be aware of when you're in this page here. So if we just, sorry, it's always a bit slow over Zoom. It isn't this slow normally. I don't want to find changes. So here, the other thing that people tend to do in regards to sort of symmetry and design layout is they tend to have their images kind of like as they have them. So this is an example of what I often see people's sites look like, where they've got their images uploaded. They've got, you know, a couple of pictures next to each other. One of them's a landscape picture and the other 2 are portraits, or one might be a square, let's say. And, you know, you can see the difference in how they look when they're all different. And so just choosing to set them, our system allows you to kind of like set them all as squares, or I could set them all as, or I could set them all as landscape, you see. And so making sure that they're all the same is a really nice way for them to be just nicer nicer looking, easier on the brain, there for people to look at in a way that draws their attention but doesn't kind of jar. And if you're going to choose the sizes of the images, it's good to try to make those images all the same size before you put them on the website, really. We've done this because it is hard to do that sometimes for people because they don't have all the right tools and all the designer kind of tools. So we've done this so that it's easier not to make those kinds of design mistakes. But if you can, make those images the same sizes that you actually want to be on your website, because it makes it faster. And I've just come across to this other example and show you. So this is a store. And again here, you know, we've got a selection of items up here that are important to the customer. We've got our call to action here to pull people through to the store. We've got a really clear message that makes it really simple for shopping. And here again, we've got things laid out in squares. And another reason to think about how you want to make those shapes of images is that it can be part of your brand. So here across the whole site, we've got square imagery. And so it all fits together. We've got view our events here. We've got testimonials. We've got information about where we are as well. So being really clear about where you are, again, another trust signal, so that people can see that you're genuine. You know, there's a lot of mistrust that goes on the internet, and that's why I'm talking to you about how you build that trust with customers and build it fast with them as we go, as you work on your website, so that you get those inquiries. And again, you can see the same colours for purchasing through the site, lovely imagery, and a little sign up to our newsletter button there. Obviously you can have a pop-up, but I'd advise if you're going to have those kind of newsletter pop-ups, you do it with a delay, so it doesn't pop up immediately when someone comes to your site and they're just starting to find out about you because it's too soon. So thinking about if you do have those kinds of interactions going on, at what point in that visitor's journey do you need that to happen? Does anyone have any questions about any of that as we're kind of going through? And then I was just going to move on to a bit about optimizing. We've got a bit of time. We're all good? Does that all make sense? Yeah? Cool. Is it helpful? Yeah? Cool. Okay, so the final bit that I'm just going to talk to you about is about website speed. So all this stuff's great, unless your website's really, really super slow, because super slow websites put people off. So, and the other thing about having a fast website is it's one of Google's ranking factors, because all the things I've just talked to you about are really about usability for the customer, about them getting really quick information from you and making that connection with you and knowing that they want to be on your website. And one of the things that really puts people off is slow websites, and that's why it's one of Google's ranking factors. The other thing I would say about websites is, and hopefully it's not something I tend to talk about too much, is make sure it's mobile friendly, because 65% of web traffic now is mobile. It's the way that Google is now ranking and indexing all websites, because the majority of their traffic and the visitors are looking on their mobiles. It's overtaken tablet and desktop. So think about that. But again, that isn't necessarily your audience. So go back to Google Analytics and look and see how your audience that are making inquiries is actually doing it. They might be doing it across devices as well. They might be doing investigation on their phone and then coming and making an inquiry on their desktop later on, or making a purchase later on the desktop. But having a fast website is really, really key to making a great impression, to getting people to see your information quickly. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because one of the things that's been really important to us recently in the last year and a half is thinking about our environmental impact. And so every website is creating emissions, and a lot of the emissions that your website is created is actually by the visitor, because the visitor is the person who may or may not be in control of their energy supplier. So that if they're not using renewable energy, or if you're not using renewable energy while you're accessing your website, the website's creating carbon emissions, and in fact just digital emissions just generally. So one of the ways that we can help support those visitors and reduce our carbon emissions is by making our websites more efficient. And again, that all plays into user experience and creating a great usable visit for them. So thinking about optimizing your images, thinking about how much content you have on there, thinking about if you're auto playing videos immediately when people come, that kind of stuff is creating lots of emissions that we don't need to create. Make things on demand for people. So if they want to watch the video is there, but it's not there for everybody immediately. There's nothing worse than when you go to one of those news sites to read something or other, and all of a sudden some sort of huge video advert starts popping up, and you get stop, but in the meantime all these banner ads are like popping in as well, and you can't stop it all, and you you know, you're in the middle of an office or something like that. And so that's a really quick way. People are just going to click straight off your website and they're going to close down the screen. And again, that plays into not making people click through too much stuff if they don't need to, making it really obvious so they don't have to hunt stuff out. But the really big win for optimizing and speed is to optimize your images. So images are probably the area where you're going to find you've got the biggest impact, and one of the easiest ways to make an impact and get your website quicker. So there's plenty of tools. I'm going to share them with you, and I think Rihanna's going to send around the is going to send around the slides after with the links in them. But things like making sure your images are the shape that you want to use them when you upload them. Thinking about the images that you download from stock sites, they're always huge. So there's loads of capacity to bring them down to a size that makes them fast on your site without losing quality as well, because you obviously want them to still be able to see what they are, but you want them to be small too, and there is lots of opportunity to do that. Choose your video carefully and consider longer pages of content. So if you've got lots and lots of text, it's better for the environment if actually you don't make people click through multiple pages to read this content, because the website has to be loaded at the top and the bottom. All the stuff that actually loads the website itself has to get loaded every single time that that person opens a new page. Some of it's cached. We do quite a lot of stuff with caching to try to reduce load and things like that, but it still is creating emissions that we don't want, basically. So the tools, Google Page Speed tool is the first place to have a look at your website speed. It's going to throw you up loads of different technical information, lots of which you might not be able to change, but the main things to look at are the resources. So the images and how big they are, and it'll give you some ideas about that. It'll tell you about videos that you've got on there. It'll also tell you about things like third-party plugins. So some third-party plugins can be really slow for your website. Things like Facebook Messenger, that can really slow things down. Some of the MailChimp stuff, like where you're embedding your email list, they can be quite intensive because they've obviously got to go and get that content from another server that they're supplying and put it onto your website all the time. So those are things to have a look at and make a decision about, well, are those things actually useful? You know, if I've got Facebook Messenger on my site and it's really, really slow, or another chat thing, because there are other chat things available, is it doing what you actually want it to do? Is it a distraction? Is it getting in the way of people taking your objective? Or is your objective to actually chat to them? In which case, look at whether or not it's the best chat tool to use. The other thing to look at is Google Analytics. So Google Analytics have a really good report which shows you which pages of your site are slower than others. And it's in your behavior section. And it shows you, it put them in a list for you, and it will show you which pages are much slower than your other pages so that you can work on those ones first. And think about ordering it by the amount of traffic that you get. So the way I would do it is you order it by the amount of visitors that those pages get. You pick off one or two of the ones that get the most visitors to optimize, because that's where your emission savings is going to be. And that's where most people's experiences are. So if you haven't got a lot of time, starting with those means that you'll get your website faster, quicker, and improve the experience and the usability for most of the people coming to the website. And then there's a couple of image checker tools here, which are really, really easy ways to just optimize those images. And in fact, they do most of it for you now, so you don't actually need to get involved in website tools. And I'll show you Can I escape? Sorry. Just come backwards. Hold on a moment. Right, so this is Cloudinary. Cloudinary will do you a free check of your website where you put the web address in, the page that you want to check, and it will show you how big the current page is, how many, and this is looking at your images, and it will show you what it thinks it can bring it down to for you. And it's a free tool, so it's really useful. And if I just do see details here, you can see here that it's got my original picture. It says it's good. It's a good picture because I have already optimized it, but it's saying here that it can further optimize it another 42%. And basically it's done it for you. And all you need to actually do once you run it through here is just use these download buttons here and re-upload those as a replacement to your website. And then you've immediately made the website faster, you've reduced your emissions and improved the customer's usability. So have a look at those tools once I've sent them over to you, because they're really a really quick way to make your website faster. So where was I? Sorry. Right. And the image compressor is another tool very similar to that, and it'll give you some different formats. The other thing to say about that is obviously when you have changed those images over, delete the old ones, because the old ones are on a server burning emissions too. And it's I like to talk about digital decluttering because we're always full of digital stuff that we're all keeping in all sorts of different places and syncing places, and it's all burning emissions. And it's never harmful just to keep what you need and have it there for, you know, less things to try to find and look through. I always find. So to sum up, and then if anybody's got any questions, I don't know if I'm over time or not, but be clear about your main objective and think about that all the way through your website and everything that you're doing on your website. Be clear about who your best customers are and how you're appealing to them, how you can connect with them, signpost your customers towards that objective, and make sure that's like the thing that you're constantly doing. Not too much, you don't want to overdo it, but just enough that they know it's there constantly and it's easy for them to do. And then test and optimize. So look at those stats, look at what the analytics programs are telling you, and try different things. That's the beauty of, you know, websites, is that you can get an immediate response and you can try different things and see what works and what doesn't fairly quickly.